Are we ready? 5 men. You are kidding me. 2 all-male panels in a row. All right. From up here, I apologize. We will fix this for next year. But I'll say this. I know a couple of them, and it's quality guys. Monsieur, Lars, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Good to see you guys. Welcome. We have been looking forward to this for a long time. But yeah, at least a couple of hours. No, I was just joking. No, welcome to this scene. There's not going to be any slides. It's going to be like a fireside chat without a fireside. And we're just going to talk about what's going on in the Nordic VC environment from different perspectives. And I think it's actually really nice to see that so many have come just by, with only my name. That would be really, really boring. So I've invited these fantastic guys to help me to set the scene in terms of the Nordic. The way we're going to do it is that they're each going to get 5 minutes where they talk a little bit about how they see the Nordic VC environment moving, their latest investments, maybe something about deal terms, I don't know, and other stuff. And then at the end of it, we hopefully have 5 to 10 minutes left for questions, because it's too boring just to listen to what we're saying. It would be really, really nice if you could think of the questions and do it in this TechBBQ style with yeah, it's probably going to be up there, right? Do you want me to say what they're going to do? Yeah, there it is. Perfect. I'll be so impolite to start by introducing myself, because I'm standing up. My name is Lars. I'm a general partner at Seed Capital. I've been doing early stage investments in Denmark for 14 years, together with my colleagues at Seed. We have been so fortunate to back some of the companies that you might have heard of. Take Endomondo, probably heard about that. Take Trustpilot, take Vivino, take Templify, take Lunarway, and all other areas, and especially within the fintech as of recent. So, yeah, and that would be, since I'm the host, I have to do the short introduction of Seed, but please ask some questions about Seed when we get to the Q&A. But I'll then introduce my fellow participants here. Would you start, and then we'll go like this?
Sure. So I'm Benjamin. I run something called Nordic Makers. Nordic Makers is in this panel. So we're not a fund, actually. It's a collection of people that built and in most cases sold large companies from the Nordics. Since we're in Denmark, some of the Danish names would be companies like Sitecore, Unity, Just Eat. What else do we have? We've got people from Momondo that were part, and a number of other sort of big companies. We're not a fund because we want whoever is investing in the company to be a lead for that company and work with them really hands-on to get to the next level. We were started, I would say, not primarily for financial reasons, meaning people that want to make a lot of money from investing, but rather a frustration of the early stage funding landscape in the Nordics. So a will to see better terms for founders. We want to see exits that generate where the waterfall is skewed towards people that backed the companies early, that took a risk in being hired by these companies. That is fundamentally what we want to do. So we're, as much as we're in this to make money, that is not the primary purpose of this. We've been in 2 years, we've done 20 plus investments. Our latest investment is, you asked us to speak some about that as well. So our latest investment is Actually, in Norway, together with the guys at Point 9, we backed a company called Confrere, which, for all those of you that think video calls suck and are tired of playing various conference calls, bingos, this is the solution. So the team that brought you a pair in, the team is back with Confrere. In terms of trends that we're seeing in the Nordics, we've noticed that just since we started, the landscape has fundamentally changed. A lot of fun. So there's more money in the stage that we operate. So our sweet spot is probably investing around €1 million. We can go up, we can go down, but again, so we're not a fund, so we're quite flexible in terms of stuff that we do. But we've seen that fundamentally there's no shortage of capital in this space. But some companies are attracting disproportionate amounts of the capital. There's new funds. There's increased interest from abroad. Just the past couple of weeks, we've had visits from 3 Asian funds being set up exclusively for the Nordics. Another thing that has changed again over the past 2 years is that corporates get way more involved, both on the sort of operationally with startups, but also on the equity side. So they actually want to invest. And that is, I'd say, a novelty in the past couple of years.
Perfect. Good. We'll get back to you. Then you, Sami.
Yeah. My name is Sami Niemi. I'm a partner in Spintop Ventures. But before that, I was an entrepreneur. So sort of entrepreneur going to the dark side. Had one of the leading imaging companies here in the Nordic region. Spintop Ventures is about 9-year-old venture capital company, which is primarily focusing on tech companies in Nordics. The mandate is Nordic companies. So we have some companies you might have heard of, like Small Giant Gaming it's getting to be the second biggest gaming company in Finland, for example. MariaDB database company. I'm sure you coders out there have used it. What else? Yeah, so basically, as a VC company, we look into companies that have sort of the founding team in place. There's kind of comprehensive roles. You have to have some sort of customer traction. We think it's important because it's really, really hard to evaluate a case without really talking to a customer and understanding from their point of view if it works or not. You want to have some sort of own technology foundation in it, and some logic that creates value for the company. So those things in place, we place tickets around 10 million SEK as well. But maybe being a venture capital company, what you do, of course, as well is you allocate quite a lot of money for future rounds. So a fund is typically live for 10 years. So we put in something around 1 million euros first, but we usually allocate 2 to 5 times as much money for later rounds for the companies, so that they can keep growing along the 10 years that are ahead. The latest investment, also a bit Norwegian actually. There's a lot of stuff happening in Norway nowadays. But actually a Swedish company, but with Norwegian founders, called OneFlow. They're basically taking the digitalization of contracts to the next level. So rather than DocuSign and all these things are still sort of paper contract put into digital form. But this company handles the whole flow, so it's more dynamic, kind of HTML-based contracts. It's very, very interesting. Quite typical, I think, for us is we've been following the company for 2 years, and then sort of gradually ensured that it's what we want, and then we've invested. So we talk to stages that are not maybe the right one for us at the moment, and then we follow the companies as they grow, so we can see that it works. The other thing that is maybe special about Spintop is too that we have a network of about 70 entrepreneurs that have invested in the company along with different funds. So that makes about 80 million euros that we then invest.
Perfect. Thank you. And then you, Gregers.
Yeah, so my name is Gregers Kronborg. I realized that I've been part of the tech startup scene for 22, 23 years.
You don't look that old, actually.
No. I started very early. I was like very young. So, thank you, Lars. So I was an entrepreneur early on where we started a broadband cable modem company to get everybody fast on the internet, where I got my first experience with venture capital. We had 3 venture investors, including Jeppe as the third one, working for Deutsche Bank at the time. We sold it to Cisco, so I got my first exit experience as well, and was part of founding the Business Angel Networks in Denmark in 2001. But then joined Northzone Ventures, one of the leading Nordic venture funds, where again I worked with Jeppe until like 3.5 years ago, and invested in companies that are now listed on stock exchanges and also Trustpilot that we have not listed yet, but which is like a good, successful, growing company that you probably all know. But then 3.5 years ago, I left Northzone and turned back to a role as a business angel, focusing on tech, primarily software, out of Denmark and on the seed stage. And investing in seed, it's very important to get access to deal flow. Not just a lot of it, but the good deals. So you need to be able to brand yourself, have a network so deals will come to you, but also to source the deals that, as an investor, that you are not otherwise close to, be part of a deal sourcing machine. And there the Business Angel Network, DanBAN, that you all should know about, has grown to a considerable force in the ecosystem. Around 170 angels, very diverse in the group, but that is my other vehicle to find deals. So we have a very agile process with pitching events kind of every month, where 12 companies come and pitch, and we have a good dialogue. And that's a good part of the scene for the entrepreneurs, but also for myself and the group of angels, because that's where we meet and connect. And also syndicate, which is something we can talk about, where syndication is a theme. In the angel network, there are different styles. Some want to syndicate a lot, some want to syndicate less, but it's a growing activity there. I normally end up investing mostly in B2B SaaS software. I do look at a broader range of investment opportunities, but that's where I find myself more comfortable. But please bring deals also in other sectors, but that's very often where I end up. My most recent investment is Safe Online, which is also here on one of the booths, which is in the GDPR space, which, because of the regulation that came into data privacy, is one of the areas where there are a lot of startups. And this company is both helping the businesses relieve them from the burden that this regulation would otherwise be, but also helping the consumer request their data, request to be forgotten, and so forth. So that's a type of investment that falls into my bracket. It's scalable, it's venture scale, it can go broad in Europe, maybe even one day to the US if they adopt our data privacy rules, which they are kind of actually keen on to some extent. But I think I'll leave it there.
Perfect. Then it's you, Jeppe.
Northzone, so we sound old, clearly, given we have been around, but
yeah. And a clear gender profile as well.
But the key thing for us is we've been around for so long that what Makers was talking about, Unity, Just Eat, Skype, we didn't do. We have a whole host of them that we didn't do. The point, though, being we were around talking about it, learning from every single one we didn't do. So the ones we did do that turned out to be big successes, such as Spotify, or last week, iSettle, or in the UK, lastminute.com, etc., we bring that to bear. And for us, we're not trying to be everything to everyone. At any given time, I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions amongst entrepreneurs, whether they are good enough for a particular venture firm. Lots of companies that come our way are good enough, but that doesn't mean we invest, and the same counts for other venture firms. Enter a dialogue to figure out what do we know about, what are we spending our time in, what are we excited about in a given moment of time. And through that dialogue, you will quickly sense, are we the right investor? Are we interested enough? Are you interested enough in us, etc.? I see far too many entrepreneurs who think it is literally just about hitting 50 VCs, and then we'll see who comes around, and then those that are really good, they think, no, I can pick and choose my partner without knowing them. I think we haven't met before. The rest of us have known each other for a long time, and that is the way it works. We typically, by and large, 4 out of 5 of us will have worked together in many, many companies. And that's the way I always try to explain Northzone to people, to say, you know, currently I can tell you we're excited about logistics. I can tell you we're excited about the notion of banking outside of banks. We're excited about, in Copenhagen specific, about enterprise B2B for a particular SME side of the equation. We would be a little bit surprised if we saw a social network coming out of here. That doesn't mean we wouldn't look at it, it's just not what we're looking for. So again, enter that dialogue, understand who you are. We see our role to work with the local partners such as Lars and Benjamin and the angel side, and I'll get to know Sami as well. And then our role is the next step. How do you bring an entrepreneur and a company outside of Denmark? We're not the best guys to help you figuring things out, how to take that initial step. We do start the journey quite often down at that stage. We all did Trustpilot, and that was, I think, a sub 10 million euro valuation, which today is a cheap seed, although we certainly didn't look at it that way when we initially did it. But the point of why we were there was very simple. Trustpilot had a ambition that went way beyond the Danish borders, and that's why they were looking to international VC. So we often start off investing 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, but the journey for us has to be something that ends up with 20 million or 30 million, ideally, over a 5-6 round setup. So that's us.
Thank you very much. I think we it could be nice just to spend a few minutes on do you see any rotation in the VC space in the Nordics? Do you see anything around that? Things are moving up. Typically, in Denmark at least, we have this notion that we have super angels, like Ratz, for instance, that has enough money to be like a small VC fund. And there are lots of those, and also some in your network as well. So that's a really interesting thing, that you can actually, do investments together with these guys for a long time. Do you have the same experience or something else in terms of that?
So just to get it started, maybe, there's definitely movement in the ecosystem. We have seen some of the oldest successful venture funds become more and more international. Northzone has become pan-European. They were Nordic. Crandom is spreading out, being very strong in the Nordics. I don't know how strong they're out in Europe yet. We have seen Sunstone out of Denmark become European more than Danish or Nordic, which is good. It's their journey. They become stronger and stronger, and they can raise money from LPs that would like that footprint for the product they are looking for. But then underneath or behind them, that opens up a field for the new guys. And we see that also around like Nordic makers, or we see buy founders, and we see also the Finnish VCs coming into our ecosystem, or the Swedish ones. And we see the angels rising up, where the business angel network is getting stronger and stronger. So
I think it's that last point, because Stockholm has a much stronger angel network than Copenhagen. And that's always been the difference between the two. You had that experience base, but we've seen the last 2-3 years these strong angels coming out. Otherwise it's been over-reliance on people like seed capital, because there simply hasn't been enough of a network. And whenever we arrive in Denmark, it's always the same 4 or 5 people we talk to and covered the market more or less, whereas now it's definitely opening up, which is great. It's mushrooming.
It's also difficult not to mention the fact that we've had 0 interest rates the past couple of years, and that you there is a larger flow of capital towards this asset class, sort of seed and early stage as such. And you see not only people that have made a lot of money in technology, but also I like to refer to them as venture tourists that are dipping their toes a little bit in this market, made some money in a completely different space, and be that real estate or whatever, and that money is also flowing in here. And that's for it's good in the sense that there's more money into the ecosystem. It is not always good in the sense of your most value add around the table, has been our experience from it.
And some of those angels we've put into our network, for example. So they've been investing in a fund and can sort of be part of a professional fund as investors, and then get co-investment recommendations where we actually write pretty big analysis for them, and they're able to kind of connect to some sort of professional analysis of these companies. Because otherwise it's fairly hard if you haven't done enough cases, obviously, to really know what's right or wrong or how you value things. And oftentimes it actually, you sort of get maybe a bit high in valuations from the private side, which then makes it hard for VCs to come in, or you end up in a tough discussion about where that should be. So.
Yeah, because I think you also see that some of the trends that we are focusing on now, like fintech or deep tech, they're also much more expensive than our traditional SaaS software companies because of regulation and so on. So I think that, and that also leads to one of the things that I think is really nice to see, that the syndication level is going up. So we are from 1.5 to like 2.5 investors in an early stage deal, which I think is really important. And we need that money. And so it comes from angels, it comes from public funds, it comes from seed funds and so on, because it's really expensive. Okay.
But Copenhagen is lucky at the moment. It happens, for whatever reason, to be seen as one of the frontier places at the moment in Europe. People are saying, how come Copenhagen has had so many successes, but we have, in the past, but we have yet to sort of see on the VC side it being dominated. So you will see a lot of international VCs here that we wouldn't frankly have seen only 3 years ago. And that's great. So now is the time to capitalize on it, and let's hope the entrepreneurs are there to deliver that interest long term.
Yeah.
But that also changes also for a lot of the local VCs, right? Some that were taken for granted as being a part of the ecosystem are all of a sudden seeing their not just position in the market being challenged, but also the future of it. Right? Effectively, as a very locally focused investor, your promise to LPs has been, we will cover this market for you, right? And then it's really frustrating when someone else flies in, does the deal, flies out, and money goes out again. Now, for the entrepreneurs, that can be great. It's probably never been better to be raising early stage capital in Denmark than today.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
So with that, we promised you that we're not going to talk all the time. We are, because we're going to answer the questions. But are there any interesting questions for us? Oh my God, there are many. I think I have the privilege of choosing, right? I think it could be interesting. Do you see any critical gaps in the Nordic VC space? Is that an interesting one?
I feel actually what Benjamin said is very true. We feel it internally. I mean, we have a 350 million euro fund now, and because that initial stage, seed, post-seed, pre-A, whatever you call it, goes much faster than it did when we set up some of these vehicles. It means that we need to change to be more relevant, to do more deals early on, whereas we were set up to do 2 deals per year per partner. And I think most international VC funds of our size are set up for that. So the trick right now is for all these seed funds with 50, 100 company portfolio, how are they going to fit through that little needle eye of somebody picking a couple of deals a year max and make themselves relevant? For me, that's the gap at the moment.
I think we have a question mark and we have a gap. Now, innovationsmiljøerne, so these state-sponsored, very early accelerators, incubators, whatever investors that are being taken out of the equation is going to be replaced with something new that we do not know what is. So that's a question mark. But I think we need that level of pre-seed and seed funding in the ecosystem. And then the other one that we've been missing for like decades, that's the small cap IPO market, where when a startup comes to a point where, well, the business model is proven, the product market fit is obvious, it's all about growing it, then we miss the option to go and fundraise for further growth in the stock market. For that reason, we need to continue with larger and larger VC rounds and eventually sell industrially. typically to an international buyer.
That's a Copenhagen problem, right?
That's a Copenhagen problem, yeah.
Yeah.
So what we've been discussing back and forth, and what we really, really would love to see is a fantastic leading accelerator type of program here, where it's more of a structured call it structures, batches, whatever. For those, I know that the family are coming here in a couple of weeks to host a session, but something which attracts talent from all over the region, and where the demo day is really, it gathers everyone as a real, be it Silicon Valley or Tel Aviv, New York type of thing, where you see this like, shit, it's really happening. That we would love to see. Everyone wants to talk about corporate VCs.
Should we talk about corporate VCs?
Talk about corporate VCs.
Yeah. I don't mind starting because I think there's a big difference between corporate VCs. Because there are fantastic corporate VCs that think of investing as on VC terms, and they are really great. We do a lot of investments together with SEB Venture. They are a corporate venture fund, but they invest like we do on terms of a VC. There's a lot of other. There are some other corporate VCs that don't get it, and they want to have it as a, right of first refusal stuff in their terms, and that simply doesn't work. It doesn't work for the founders. It doesn't work for the VCs. It doesn't work for anybody, except the corporate VC. So they're good and bad.
Yeah, it's often a bit hard to know what the corporate VC will do, because they go into a venture with more than financial focus. So maybe it's something where it's close to their strategy, super good. Early, maybe they get some sort of customer traction through that VC's corporations, but then very often the focus changes, and what happens is that you cannot trust in that VC maybe coming with new money in the future. So those things may happen, but many times it just works brilliantly. So.
No, they come and go.
Yeah.
I agree with many of the points. I think they're rarely good and mostly bad, but it's also extremely cyclical. So every time there's like a boom in the economy like now, they mushroom everywhere. Come the recession, and it will come, they just close down again. And what do you do if you have them in your investor base and they are not participating because they let the investment team go because it was not important anymore?
And that's actually an important thing, because I guess we all know, even though we cannot foresee the future, I guess that within the next couple of years, that was very soft, something is going to happen to the economy, right? How will that affect the environment we're looking at? You were talking a little bit about it, and do you have any issues on that?
Can I just add a point first on the corporate VCs?
Oh yeah, you chose it. Sorry for that.
No, the crowd chose it. I think regarding figuring out if I don't think it's the entrepreneur to VC due diligence process doesn't have to be different just because it's a corporate VC. It's the same thing of calling entrepreneurs that the fund or this investor has backed before, where you see that the funding is sort of inconsistent. They invested and then didn't invest, or in something you can sort of look it up on Crunchbase or wherever you get your funding news, but doing that due diligence, and you'll probably find someone who has worked with the corporate, either an investor or else, that will tell you this is good, it's a bad corporate. I'm not sure the process needs to be very different.
Could we get some specifics? Because I know you guys all have 1,000 good war stories.
Okay, I'll give you one on a positive side. We just sold last week, I love plugging this one. It's iSettle for $2.2 billion. iSettle would not have happened if they hadn't taken in money from Visa, MasterCard, Amex, and then added Santander and had a strategic relationship with Telia. But the key thing is, if you read up and Google them, you will never see any of those names leading any round. They were there for a purpose. They were there for distribution. They were there to do specific things. So I think back to syndication, incredibly important to have them part of it, but you must never rely on the money side of it from them. That's not what they're there for.
Cool, so that was super for a fintech. We got another example of somebody else with using corporate VCs as a strategic partner that made a big difference.
No, but I have an example where, again, with SAB, but actually the corporation is working with the Danish fintech environment for currency exchange, but there's no investment tied to that. Could be one day, but at this point in time, it's just a cooperation between two companies that have the same business aligned business interests. So it's different. Once they turn on the investment request, that's very, very often when the strategic strings get attached, and that's where you need to be careful.
So yes,
But sometimes it works in cohesion, but sometimes it doesn't.
one of the last people on the previous panel, while you guys were either skidding in your taxi or getting mic'd up, one of the guys talks about cages and about strategic corporate VCs sometimes setting a valuation so high that you couldn't raise a second round. An example of that any of you guys can think of?
I mean, yes, they're there all the time. If you read the news from the last week, again, I'm afraid it's London and it's fintech, but Funding Circle is going public, and there happens to be a Danish guy called Poulsen who is very wealthy, and he has put in a backstop on the valuation so that it will happen. Now, you've never seen that before. It's irrational from a financial perspective. It is great for the entrepreneurs in that particular company, but it does mean that that now increases the risk for that particular IPO to fail, because there's distrust. You know, there's a guy that's picking up the check at the back end.
Right.
And he's doing it because he's investing in ASOS and various supermarkets, and it has strategic interest.
Cool. Lovely examples of specificity. I love that.
We
They
had
like that out there in the cheap
we had
seats.
a chipset manufacturer investing into an investment, and then actually, as Jeppe, what you were saying, you wouldn't find out that they were an invest. The first thing they did was everyone signed an NDA, but that was they did provide a lot of value in the sense that they wanted to give and support the company on it. So it was a hardware investment on that part, which they did.
So when we talk about adding value, also these guys are always, because they're out there in the audience talking to you now, talking about the value they add. So what kind of value did they? You said it was a chipset manufacturer, and there was specifics. Or?
As one of the largest chipset manufacturers in the world, they could help negotiate. As you know, a tricky part with hardware becomes capital cost, and they just helped change that entirely. They were able to squeeze the suppliers.
So you got the supplier, you got the big company price for a startup piece of
or
hardware.
like the conglomerate price.
And how big, just for people that aren't, let's say the software people out there that don't know how big a price difference that can be. Like 30, 40%, 50%.
It was not just on the price, but it was on the payment terms, and that made a hell of a difference.
Yeah, I think one of the things around this is also the value add, which I think is something that we are all focusing on in different ways. How can we help the founders in the best way? And I think that some of the large investors from the US, for instance, we have in the Templify we got Inside Ventures in, and they have like 50 people in their value add service. So anything a company like that could want, they have it. And I think
just some examples of just what that could be.
Yeah, but anything. They have like an entire operations team that they have sales people, they have product people, they have everything, everybody.
They just pop into your company to help with that.
Sorry? So
did they just parachute in to help you with that in your company?
Yeah, and sometimes it's really annoying, but I guess some of it is good. But I think that's some of the stuff that are coming down from the private equity world to our world, and also we are sort of trying to translate into, if you are a seed investor, for instance, what can we help our companies with, and it's been especially with team, having sort of getting the talent to flow into the companies. That's been really important for us. I guess, any of you guys? I mean, you have a special setup where you.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I mean, we're super hands-on with the companies ourselves, the partners, but the entrepreneur network that is connected, we usually we call them wingmen. So when you sit in the board, there might be somebody who's worked with or founded a company very similar early on that we put together with the company and basically accelerate the company's growth. So sort of, in some sense, like the Silicon Valley model, but but these people are sourced externally, and because they're investors in the fund, and may also that they might have opportunities to invest in the co-investment rounds, they are very incentivized to really work with the companies and get them growing. So it's sort of a cheap way to source talent. And money as well, because they invest in the fund.
Yeah, yeah.
So, very.
I wouldn't underestimate either how many of these corporates are investors in the VC funds. We always, it's a double-edged sword, and we always try hard, but some of them we do take in, and therefore you should ask your VC investor, anybody that can help us amongst your ranks.
You're supposed to think, like, one of the key questions also is, like, where are you from in your company, right? I mean, yeah, you show up from Sony or you show up from Siemens. They're enormous organizations, right? And we're like, which piece of Siemens are you from, yeah? Which, I mean, has that ever made a difference with you guys? Have you seen
Well, I mean, we have the advantage that we don't do anything else with our lives. So we see these guys a lot more. If you're an entrepreneur, you're pitching, you may have to do it 1, 2, 3 times, right?
You guys are running into each other or...
Literally, it is scary. Even if you go Singapore, now Far East, for certain places, we will actually know. We took Zoni in because we knew you had to go to the chairman's son. That's how you do it.
Voila, this is a very, very specific example of a value add. I loved it. Listen, we've got a break after this, and as I keep saying, you are between them and the exit, right? So take advantage of it. If you'd like me to do the introductions, you'd like Claudia to do the introductions, we'll do that too. Otherwise, put your hand out, say hi, my name is. That's where you put in your name, you don't just... But, and then ask them. If you want money, ask him for money. If you want advice, ask him for advice. I won't name the old joke about that. But if you want introductions, go ahead and ask them for introductions too. For right now, Lars, thank you very much for running this. You got anything to add?
Thank you for listening to us. I hope you enjoyed it. So that'll be all from us. Thank you. Have a nice TechBBQ.
Thank you.